When people see Captain Falcon nowadays, it's rare that they actually think of him as an F-Zero character. All those kicks, knees, and badly timed punches have gone a long way in making him one of the most hyped up, celebrated characters in the Smash roster, but as for the F-Zero franchise itself, well, that's a different story. What was once one of Nintendo's biggest names, standing proudly amongst the ranks of Mario, Zelda, and Donkey Kong, has now seemingly vanished without a trace. After all, there hasn't been a new F-Zero entry since 2004, and that was a GBA game that didn't even release outside of Japan. So, why has this happened? Well, one could make the argument for any number of things, from an apparent lack of new ideas for the series to just being overshadowed by a certain other Nintendo kart racer. Despite this, F-Zero is a franchise that I feel has maintained a high standard of quality across all of its entries, and today, we'll be taking a look at the magnum opus. I'm FibreOpticBroadbean, and this is why I love F-Zero GX. Across the wide spectrum of racing games out there, F-Zero GX is like no other. The main focus of the game is going fast, and I mean really fast. None of this 200cc nonsense, oh no, we're talking 2000 miles an hour fast here. Because of this high-speed nature, a lot of F-Zero's gameplay boils down to split-second decisions, good reflexes, and track memorization. Every course is completely different, but the more you play each one, the more it becomes drilled into your muscle memory, and as such, the better you become at racing on it. You learn to anticipate each turn, each hazard, each gap, and tracks that once seemed impossible gradually become familiar turf. Some courses are particularly taxing, and you're likely to die on them countless times, whether you're plummeting off the edge or getting screwed over by that one particularly nasty bend. The tracks in this game are full of hazards that can send you to an untimely demise, and these only add to the list of lightning-fast decisions that you have to make during a race. For example, if you're approaching a turn, you have a few different options. You could just drive around it normally, but this tends to only work on the very gradual bends. Alternatively, you could perform a drift, which can be used on much sharper turns, but comes at the cost of lowering your speed slightly. Then there's the third option, which is power sliding, a risky technique that involves your machine sliding around a bend, which in turn increases your speed but may cause you to lose control. The approach you take very much depends on the situation at hand, as when you're on a track with no guardrails, sliding can be a bad idea if you haven't mastered it yet. Bends aren't the only thing you have to worry about, however, far from it. The game also throws massive gaps, jump pads, icy roads, and landmines at you. When you're approaching a gap, you've got to decide if you want to maximize your airtime by holding back on the control stick or go straight for a nosedive into the ground as quickly as possible to maintain your momentum. If there's a field of landmines ahead, one option would be to just go straight for it and hit as many mines as possible. Contrary to what you'd expect, hitting the mines actually gives you a burst of speed in this game, but the caveat is that this takes a chunk out of your machine's energy meter. Another thing you have to worry about is the 29, yes, 29 other racers on the track with you. If you get too close to some of these guys, they might try and take you out of the competition by attacking your vehicle. To combat this, you could either counter-attack with a side or spin attack, or alternatively just avoid the other racers altogether. Then there's the boost system, a staple of the F-Zero series that I think is fantastic. Naturally, boosting gives you a burst of speed, but this comes at a cost. Each time you boost, you lose some energy from your meter, and as we know, when you run out of energy, this happens. This is a really cool risk-reward system, and stamina management is something you have to constantly think about during a race. Do you expend your energy to get ahead of the pack as soon as possible at the risk of dying, or do you use your boosts more conservatively? Further adding to the complexity of this dilemma are the energy recovery panels, which can refill your meter. However, these are spread out pretty sparsely across the course, so you have to think carefully about whether you can afford to boost at that point in time. If you're close to one of these panels, then by all means go for it, but if the next one is all the way on the other side of the course, then are you prepared to take that risk? This is yet another place where track memorization comes into play, as if you know where the recovery panels are, then you can boost way more effectively. In fact, even before you begin a race, there's some merit to knowing the track layouts inside out. You see, prior to each race you take part in, you're given the option to adjust your acceleration and max speed, which adds another layer of depth into the decisions you have to make. If you know that the track you're about to go on has some horrible turns, then going all in on the max speed might not be the best idea, but conversely, if it's a relatively straight and simple layout, then you might want to consider cranking it up a bit to see what speeds you can achieve. Managing all of this at once may seem daunting at first, and admittedly, it is, but nothing beats the feeling when you figure it all out, find your optimal path around the course, and cruise your way into first place. After all the effort you put in, all the times you failed, that success is the reward you reap, and it makes it all worth it. If it's not clear from all of this, F-Zero is a very mechanically deep game and will take a long time for you, the player, to master. But that's the thing, the majority of its gameplay comes down to your raw ability, your skill. Unlike a lot of other racing games, there's no items, RNG or bad luck you can blame for your performance, so if you make a mistake, it's on you. Maybe you weren't quick enough on the turns and bashed into too many walls, or maybe you were too reckless with the boost and didn't conserve your energy. Having that knowledge is what motivates you to improve your playstyle. While the gameplay is really what makes F-Zero, well, F-Zero, one aspect of it that I think goes largely underrated is its character roster. GX in particular smashed it out of the park in that department, with the largest character selection in the entire series. All 30 races from F-Zero X returned alongside a few extras, specifically Deathborn from the game's story mode and the 10 characters that featured in F-Zero AX, which was GX's arcade counterpart. These guys all have their own different machines, all of which feel very different to control. Each one is ranked from A to F on 3 different characteristics, those being body, boost and grip. Body determines how durable the machine is, boost is self-explanatory, and grip is how much it slides during turns. With so much variety, there's a machine in the game for everyone. For beginners, something like the Big Fang or Astro Robin is ideal, with a high body and grip to allow you to tank hits and make turns easily. These vehicles tend to have a lower boost stat, but this makes them easier to control for someone new to the game. Once you become more experienced, you can start using some of the trickier machines, like the ones that have a lower grip and body with a higher boost stat to compensate. Naturally, these are a lot harder to control and tend to get battered a lot quicker, but you can achieve some incredible speed using them. However, the very first machine you have access to, and the one you'll be using throughout the game's story mode, is of course Captain Falcon's signature Blue Falcon, and honestly, of all 41 available options, I couldn't have picked a better starter vehicle. With a B rank in both body and grip, it's both durable and easy to handle, and while its C rank in boost isn't the best in the game, it's still pretty respectable and makes the Blue Falcon a perfectly viable machine, even when you're more experienced. Over the course of F-Zero GX, you also collect different car parts which you can use to make your own machines. The customization is surprisingly in-depth as well. Alongside all of the parts having their own weight and affecting the final stats in a different way, you can also adjust their colours using a full-on RGB slider and apply emblems to them as well. With so many potential combinations, the possibilities are pretty much endless, and you can end up making some insane stuff that's better than any of the pre-built machines in the main game. One of my favourite tracks to test out custom machines on is Casino Palace Split Oval, since with all the boosters on the track, you can build up so much speed that this happens. It's so fun just to mess around and see what wacky combinations you can make. Of course, the one thing everyone has to try is making one with an A rank in body, boost and grip, but you quickly realise that that's far from ideal and usually results in a heavy, clunky, sluggish ride. As well as having their own vehicles, each of the 41 characters in the game also has their own pilot profile, which provides a little bit of backstory about who they are and what led them to start racing. This was something I appreciated a lot as a kid, and I used to spend hours reading through all of them, a little bit like the Piclopedia in Pikmin 2. Giving each character a small bio like this would have been enough, but they didn't stop there. They all have their own theme songs as well. Some of these are actual tunes, like Samurai Goro's, Mighty Gazelle's, and Leon's. When it comes to Captain Falcon himself, he got what sounds like some kinda modern Christian rock? Some of these lyrics, man, forever he will be my hero. When I think of him, I see no fear, feel no pain. I'm not gonna lie, the song is still an absolute banger, but these lyrics are actually hilarious. Regardless, the fact that every single character has their own theme is amazing, and if there's ever a new F-Zero game, I hope the same amount of effort goes into the finer details like this. It doesn't even stop there. Every time you win a Grand Prix, the character you're playing as gets interviewed, and while some of the voice acting is questionable at best, it's still cool that they put this much effort into fleshing out some otherwise irrelevant side characters.
What are your plans now you've won?
My battery is low, so I need to recharge.
Thank you for the interview.
There's also a short 30-second movie you can unlock for each character by winning a Grand Prix on Master Mode, and these are really something, huh? What were they on when they made some of these, man? Like, what is even happening here? It's so stupid, but it's hilarious at the same time. While we're on the subject of characters, one of F-Zero GX's biggest features was the new story mode it introduced, and much like the character profiles in movies, it's interesting to say the very least. It starts off pretty tame, with Captain Falcon entering his Batman-style secret base and taking the Blue Falcon for a practice run in preparation for the upcoming Grand Prix. Things, however, quickly escalate after he finds himself challenged to a 1v1 against Samurai Goro before being roped into a gambling race by an old man and...
Hey, where do you think you're taking me?
Oh no, why does he sound like that? What is this voice acting? Regardless, he wins the race, drives off on his merry way, and then immediately gets surrounded by a gang, has to save someone from a burning building, and then gets a time bomb strapped to his machine by his evil clone. You know, just normal Captain Falcon stuff. Then it's time for the Grand Prix, and you know, something's always bothered me about this. Why is Black Shadow allowed to race here? He's been established as a criminal, he's been terrorizing innocent citizens, setting fire to buildings, has made multiple attempts on Captain Falcon's life, and doesn't even try to hide it. That's not to mention that this Grand Prix is also host to an assassin, a gang leader, a literal dinosaur, and hold on, let me check this one. A known criminal who, and I quote, has a special device that pumps adrenaline and dopamine into his body. Excuse me? How is any of this allowed? Things only get worse after our boy Falcon takes home the title, defeating Black Shadow, who then gets banished into the Shadow Realm by the self-proclaimed leader of the underworld and presumably the devil himself, Deathborn, who then proceeds to challenge Captain Falcon to a race, because of course he does. Apparently, this is because the champion's belt that Falcon just won contains the power of light, and Deathborn's belt contains the power of darkness, and when combined, they'd grant him the power to completely destroy the universe or something like that. This story, man, it's the most beautiful thing I've ever seen in my life. In retrospect, it's so funny how this game takes itself so seriously, and then you have these jankily animated cutscenes with the corniest voice acting you've ever heard in your life. It has this strange charm about it, and I can't help but just love it so much. Each chapter of the story has 3 difficulty levels: normal, hard, and very hard. Now, if you hadn't gathered this already from everything I've said up to this point, this game is brutal. Let me put it this way: normal difficulty is hard difficulty is very hard, and very hard difficulty is near impossible. But here's the thing, I mentioned earlier in the video that alongside the 30 characters from F-Zero X, this game also featured 10 secret extra characters from the arcade game. In order to unlock these characters, you have to, yep, you guessed it, beat each story mode chapter on very hard mode. This is absolutely evil, but when you combine the excitement of unlocking a new machine with the extra lore, music and movies you gain access to, there's enough incentive to make you want to work towards getting every last character. You might find some of these chapters easier than others, but it really depends on your skill set. I, for one, got through chapter 2 on very hard mode, which is the race against Samurai Goro, relatively easily. The course layout is pretty simple here, and the only major hazards to look out for are the falling rocks, so I'd recommend starting out with this one if you're struggling. However, I remember having an awful time with chapter 4, where you have to take down the leader of a gang. Generally, the recommended strategy for this mission is to try and take out every single gang member using a combination of side and spin attacks, thus making it easier to target the leader. However, I genuinely suck at the combat in this game, so this one took me a while to get through as a kid. Then there's what is, in my opinion, the hardest chapter in the game, Chapter 7, the Grand Prix. On very hard mode, this becomes a 5-lap race as opposed to the standard 3 laps, and when you combine this with a complex track layout, unusually aggressive AI, and hazards everywhere to ruin your day, this one is a disaster waiting to happen. It took me weeks, if not months, to finally take the win on this one, but man, was it incredibly satisfying to beat it once and for all and unlock the last machine I needed to complete the full set. At the end of the day, that's what F-Zero is and has always been about. Showing persistence in the face of adversity and conquering what once seemed impossible. To me, the story of the F-Zero franchise is really a sad one. It was a series that was doomed to dwindling popularity in spite of each entry improving drastically upon the last. I mean, I love F-Zero X just as much as the next guy, but with all the improvements made, to me, GX blows it out of the water. Will we ever get to see a new F-Zero game? I certainly hope so, but if not, at least it ended on the highest note it could have done. F-Zero GX is a game that had a lot of passion behind it, and it shows. From the intricacies of the gameplay, to the efforts made to expand the lore, to even the ridiculously over-the-top story mode, it's evident that this game meant a lot to the people working on it. And hey, it's a game that meant a lot to me as well. It's a game that motivated me to master its mechanics. It's a game that fueled me to overcome all of its obstacles no matter how insurmountable they seemed. And that, my friends, is why I love F-Zero GX.